Welcome into the Behind the Frenzy podcast. I'm your host, Dean Holzwarth. Today, I'm joined by Andy McDonald and Lainey Gerber.
How we doing?
Good. District final week.
It sure is.
But before we kind of talk about some of the district final matchups, let's kind of recap last week and kind of what games led us to get to the district
Including
finals.
the weather. I again could not wear shorts last week, so I was very disappointed. But Jack made the point that some coaches do still wear shorts, even when they probably shouldn't. And both games I was at, they had shorts on.
Oh yeah.
So you could step up your game. Really.
I could have. I could have been better. And that's what I'm trying to. I'm trying to admit that to everybody. I'm sorry that I didn't wear shorts.
So Lainey, we've been talking about the weather now for probably 3 or 4 weeks. About how nice it's been. There's been no rain every Friday. There's been no tornadoes.
We've gotten so lucky.
We've gotten so lucky. So I always look ahead. I'm like, all right, what's Friday? Mostly clear.
Yeah.
Okay, a little bit cool. It's fine.
I can deal with that. That's
but
fine.
no rain, no wind.
As long as there's nothing, falling from the sky, it
Yeah.
can be manageable. Last week I did have to break out the hand warmers though for the first time this season. So and that might have just been me. It was cold.
But how long were those hand warmers? How long did you have those?
Oh, I had them for
heard
over
you
a
said
year.
you didn't think they'd work.
Yeah, they said they were expired. So note to everyone, just because your hand warmers say they're expired doesn't mean they won't heat up because they
That's
did.
crazy.
But you should also stock up on more hand warmers.
We're getting to the point now where we're getting that dreaded semifinal week where it's always the coldest weather right before we go to Ford Field.
Oh, yes.
So if we somehow survive where the weather is in the 50s, I'm gonna throw a party or something.
Yeah.
Because that's
I'm okay
crazy.
with that.
And this week looks good as well.
Yeah.
Yay.
So hey, let's start with Division 1.
All right.
We had probably the biggest upset of last week with Granville beating Rockford.
Yeah.
Kind of talk about that, Andy. I mean, I think last week we talked about Granville had the potential, right?
Yeah,
really good offense,
absolutely.
Jaden Terry. But Rockford's been so good, even though they had a couple slip ups this year. But we didn't necessarily expect Granville to come out and do what they did.
I just think with how Granville started their season with the 3 losses and everything, even though they were in close games, they just couldn't get over the hump and get victories. It kind of felt like this game would maybe be too big for them too, to be honest. It's kind of how I looked at it coming in, just because Rockford's had so much experience in the past in these games winning. I mean, I think, when did you say their last first round exit was before we were talking about it? 2019. So it says a lot about Rockford, the program they run. I mean, how many years had it been? 5 years since they had lost a home game with Brent Cummings.
Yep.
So, I mean, it says a lot about how good Granville really can be when they're playing their best football. I think they proved that again on Friday night. So it's an impressive win and awesome to see them get to the second round.
Yeah.
And
And Granville gets its revenge, right?
Yeah.
Because Rockford ended their season last year.
Yeah.
So with a lot of those guys still returning on the team, they know.
Yeah, for
You've
sure.
seen both those teams, Lainey. I was surprised that Granville's defense only holding Rockford to 14 points.
Yeah. I mean,
that was their
Isaac
best
Poot
defensive
is insane. Maybe that's the whole game plan. If you could stop him, it might be a little easier just to hold off Rockford in general.
And then Granville will play at Hudsonville this week. Lainey, you were at the Hudsonville East Kentwood game. East Kentwood gave Hudsonville a scare, but they were able to get it done at the end.
Definitely. I mean, a walk-off field goal, literally as time expired. The clock was running down as they were setting up for the field goal. So a nice short one, so manageable, but still crazy. I thought it would have been cool for a second if East Kentwood won, since they were trailing almost the entire game and then came up with the lead, and then their defense really popped off once they got that lead. But yeah, a crazy game. I'm so glad I was there for the entirety of it.
And just to talk about East Kentwood, I mean, I think that program's going in the right direction since they've had
Absolutely.
the coaching changes there. They had a lot of games they were competitive in, even though they didn't win every one this year or anything like that. Still really, really good season for them, and I think them getting enough points to get in the playoffs in this new system, they'll be a team that we're used to seeing in the future get in most years. So, but then I guess I just got to ask you, Dean, who do you like in this game coming up? Because I think Hudsonville and Granville are both maybe not the teams at the beginning of the season we expected to see in this game, but
I mean, Granville's riding high, obviously, from that win, so that momentum might carry them a little bit. I think Hudsonville kind of knows, hey, we have to play well, or this could be the end of our season.
yeah, and they kind of, like she was saying, they were getting come back on at the end of that game. So, I mean, the fact that they kind of had to survive, I don't know how that'll affect them going into this week, but
Yeah, Hudsonville seems like a well-oiled machine almost. Like them giving up the lead in the second half of that game last week almost didn't seem like it was in their character.
Yep.
It didn't seem like that's something that should have happened to them, but it was a slip. So I think they could have a great game this Friday if they get back to their ways, because they do seem like they just run very well and very smoothly.
Yeah, Brady Van Lake's very good. Griff Baker is the quarterback.
Yeah.
And their defense is solid. even though they gave, allowed East Kentwood to kind of come back in that game. Still solid.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, it's tough to stop any team when they're playing for their season. So,
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, I mean,
100%.
it's a good offense at East Kentwood, too, when they have things going right. So,
Yeah.
credit to Hudsonville for just getting the job done, really.
Yeah, one last note on this game. So Hudsonville and Granville have met 36 times. The series is at Granville leads at 18, 17, and 1.
Wow.
Okay.
So through the
Flip a
years,
coin, huh?
very competitive between this team and now, stakes are the highest they've ever been.
That'll
For
be
sure.
so fun.
Yeah. Okay, so that is your Division 1. Let's move on to Division 2. Byron Center goes to Mona Shores. Revenge game for Byron Center. And I think, I'm going to just say this, I think Byron Center is up to the challenge here this time. Even going back to Mona Shores again, I think they're up to the challenge.
Yeah, I think after, we kind of talked about the Northview game, I mean, that's a team that surprised me to get beat the way they did, to be honest. I mean, I know we kind of talked about how maybe, they're not a name that's in the playoffs all the time, so maybe that would be a little bit of a big game for them playing against a team like Byron Center, who came into the season with a lot of people coming back knowing that they had goals in mind. And I think they proved that, they have a team that wanted it a little bit more on Friday night. But Mona Shores is not going to be an easy contest for them to get by. I think that's a team that we've talked about as probably being a team that you would think could make it all the way to Ford Field. So if they can get by Mona Shores, they got to feel, not that you want to look ahead after that, but they got to feel pretty good about themselves. So I don't think they'll be looking ahead of this one, that's for sure.
Yeah, that Northview game fired them up. They were talking, they heard some things before the game.
Yeah.
So, they were really ready to beat
Byron Center
Northview.
did?
Yeah. But I mean, they heard some things. It was us. We interviewed
Yes.
Northview for a game preview, and they just said that they were ready to punch guys in the mouth if they had to.
Oh, wow.
Which is something that every football team, I think, says these days.
Right.
But, they took that personally
Yeah.
for some reason, and they used it.
I couldn't believe the score when I saw it because I
Well,
didn't cover
it
that
was
game.
it was
Yeah.
10-7 at the half.
Yeah.
So so I was listening to it, went and did my game, and then I came back out and they're like, it's 31-10. Like late in the third quarter, I was like, what? So
Yeah.
something happened at halftime. Mark Sisko flipped the switch or
Great
whatever.
coach.
Offense started going against a good Northview defense. 21 points later, the game's out of reach.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It was definitely a good effort by them, but also, I mean, Mona Shores, they look as dominant as they have been all season. So
Well, I'm going to stop you there. So I'm going to be honest. I was
Okay.
at that game against Traverse City West, and they were a little undisciplined.
Okay.
There was a lot of penalties, pushing them back. They struggled to stop Traverse City West. Like Traverse City West had some longer drives that they couldn't capitalize on. So maybe it was nervous energy from being in the playoffs. Maybe it's the increased expectations of this Mona Shores team, but they didn't look like the Mona Shores team that I had seen. And when I left there, it was only 6-0 with a couple minutes left.
wow.
The one thing that Landon Tungate cannot do from Byron Center's quarterback is he threw 3 interceptions in that first meeting. And I watched Mona Shores defense pick off the Traverse City West quarterback twice. So it's very hard to throw against this Mona Shores defense.
No doubt. They seem to be doing a good job. I mean, anytime you get a shutout speaks a lot to it. So especially in the playoffs, you got a team coming from all the way up there. They're fired up to play. I mean, I know that most people would probably pick Mona Shores to win that game, but I mean, Traverse City West is usually a school that we're at least hearing about in the first couple rounds. So yeah, it says a lot about them. And Byron Center, though, they're a different beast right now. I think that's a huge win for them last week. So it'll be interesting. Got a great quarterback going against a good secondary. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Division 3, defending state champion Forestville Central, still alive after beating East Grand Rapids for the second straight week and allowing no points to East Grand Rapids. So that defense is really stingy right now. Have you seen Forestville Central?
I covered them once this year, and that was a little bit earlier when they played Forest Hills Northern. And honestly, it was kind of like I feel like that was maybe a moment where they woke up a little bit, just because they didn't seem like themselves in that game. And I think all season we were kind of questioning, like, is this the same team that made the state title a year ago? Probably not. I mean, you lose the coach you had forever, but it seems like it's proving more and more week by week right now that they have that culture built in now. Even losing their coach last year, it seems like they have a good program going. And I expect them to play great this week.
No, I was thinking that too, how at the beginning of the season we were like, okay, this obviously isn't the same team that it was last year. And now, I mean, it might be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Coopersville's played well this year. I don't
Yeah.
think it's going to be a pushover.
No, they got their revenge on Kennewick. I mean, that's a team that beat them the first when they played it just a couple weeks ago. So to go out there and beat them 39-13 says a lot about how ready they were. You keep bringing it up. Their 100th 100th year of football.
100th year of football. They have a
planning
lot to
for
play
that.
for. They don't. They,
They want to play with the bang, yeah.
Yeah.
They want to keep this 100th season going as long as possible.
Honestly, I do think Coopersville will keep this game close. I'm not completely there
I
in
agree.
Forso Central this year yet. So
Right.
I got to prove a little bit more to me, but I do think it'll be a good game. If I had to pick who was going to win, I'd probably take Forso Central in the end, just being where they've been in the past couple of years. But we'll see.
Yeah, that playoff experience, I think, looms large.
Yeah, totally.
And will benefit them greatly. Zeeland West. Have we talked about Zeeland West? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
They go to St. Joe. I am looking.
It should be a pretty good game. I mean, both these teams had like just about the equal amount of points. St. Joe getting 70 and Zeeland West getting 67 going in. So I expect it to be a game that's pretty tight all the way through. But Zeeland West also seems like the one team from our area that I think could possibly make it to Ford Field because they're coached right and their offenses always seems to be tough for other teams to stop. So, yeah.
And it'll be a road game for Zeeland West. They go to St. Joe.
Mm-hmm.
St. Joe is 9-1. Scored 364 points this year. They have a really, really good offense. Only loss was to Mattawan this year, so they've had a really good season too. They don't want it to end.
Mm-hmm. For
No,
sure.
definitely. And these districts are all so close in the point totals that everyone got in order to make it to the playoffs. So, I mean, they only speak so much.
Mhm.
Everyone almost has the same amount unless you're like the 1, 3, and 6 team that made it in.
And I covered that Mattawan team last week. They're not a joke either. You know, they were down 14-0 early in that game. They came back and got ahead 27-14. So that's a well-coached team. So that's a pretty good loss for St. Joe to have. So I think Zeeland's definitely got a challenge coming for them this week.
Yeah, and we talked about this last week. If they can get through that game,
Yeah,
like
it
who knows?
feels
We
like
might be going to see them
they
at
have a
Ford
path.
Field.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Just another game we'll hit real quick. Lowell at DeWitt. Obviously, Lowell's had a really good season, but they're going to face a challenge.
Yeah,
in
it's
DeWitt.
DeWitt. That's the team we're talking about in every sport every year. They just have a good program over there of athletics. So Lowell is also a team that is in the past they were a dominant force around here. So they were always good. I feel like I was always hearing about them in East Grand Rapids when I was younger. That was two teams
yeah.
I was always hearing about. So they're trying to get back to what they were then, and I wouldn't count them out. But yeah, DeWitt's a tough monster to tackle. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Lowell seems like it is what it is at face value. I don't know if they hide anything.
Yeah.
Like they're good at what they're good at. They're not good at what they're not good at. And I think DeWitt's really going to notice that pretty quickly and
Yeah,
be able to attack them.
I agree. Division 4, South Christian. Now, if
Mhm.
anybody has any motivation, Unity Christian put up 50 against them in their last meeting
No
in
doubt.
week 7. It was.
I love that game.
6.
I mean, if there's one you could circle, I think that's definitely one of them. I think a lot of people are looking forward to this one.
Yeah.
Not a question.
Well, Uni Christian, obviously their offense is just, it's to me it's one of the best offenses we've seen here around here in the last few years. Just a running game, and then their defense is solid too. So
It was only a couple of years ago they were, the highest score. They broke the record for the most points in MHSAA history, I believe.
So Lainey, this is crazy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you this. So 2021,
Yeah.
Unity went 13-1. Okay, they lost a wild game where they lost a late lead.
And state
And
title.
state
that's-
title
and-
game.
And don't kid you, those kids know about that.
Yeah.
So
Anyway,
they think about
So
it.
in that year, Lainey, they scored in their 14 games 803 points.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And I looked like they've scored 445 already this year, and I say, hey, they're have a really good offense. They've scored 63, 56, 50 in the 40s.
Yeah.
But 803 points. Like that,
Yeah.
that I'm not saying that team is
No, that's just who they are. They're
Yeah.
just going to keep putting up a lot of points. That is insane. More than 800 points.
South Christian's going to
That's
have
cool.
a tough time stopping them. I think
will.
that they know, and Carson Viss knows that if they're going to win this game, they're going to have to match them toe for toe on offense pretty much. So I could see it being a good game if he's playing his best, which I'm sure he's going to give it his all, being that it could be his last game, right?
Yes.
So I expect this to be a better one than some people might think.
I think I agree with you. I think Carson Viss is not going to let his high school career kind of go by.
Yeah, like that in the end,
Like-
especially with how last year ended for him. So
Yeah.
he's going to give everything he can to get back to Ford Field. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's good at putting a game in his hands. I mean, literally carrying the ball, but he's good at doing anything with it in order to change the game. So I'm sure he's going to try to bring out the stops.
Yes.
No doubt.
Yes. Division 5, Catholic Central at West Catholic. old school rivalry, been around forever. City old school at City League that I used to cover back in the day. I was at this game last year. It was at West Catholic. I think some people kind of gave the edge to West Catholic last year, and Catholic came back and they scored a late touchdown. And they ended up winning that game, and that game kind of propelled them to the state championship.
Yep.
Do we see a similar thing here?
This is another one of those games where you're going to circle it for sure. Just, I mean, people in this area love that one, but it's another coin flip, man. I mean, both these teams have had pretty similar seasons, it kind of feels like. I mean, maybe you could argue West Catholic's had a little bit better of a season, I guess, but because this just isn't usual for Catholic Central. They don't have the losses like this, but if there's any coach that knows how to win this game, it's Todd. So I expect them to be ready to play in this one, but I don't know. Like last week, it sounded like West Catholic. I wasn't at that game. They had a little bit of trouble with Oak Ridge in the first half because they got up to a lead, but they ended up giving up 14 unanswered points to end that first half.
Right.
So I think it was 19-14 at halftime. So they're not going to be able to do that to Catholic Central, I don't think. I think if they give them any leeway, they probably are going to take it a mile. So,
Right.
yeah, it's going to be one of those games that I think whatever team gets out in front first could run away with it.
Yep.
But I never count out anything in this game. There's been so many crazy games over the years. So it's the one I'm supposed to be at this week. So I'm pretty excited about it. That's for sure.
These like playoff rivalry games are so fun. And to answer your question, it could totally propel you through the rest of the playoffs to have a big win, especially since it's not just the first playoff game. You're now we're in the second one now. So you're just getting deeper and deeper into it. A big win could give you a lot of energy.
Yeah. And CC had no problem with Hopkins. So, I mean, that shut them out. So their defense is playing about as good as it can going into this game. So Landon Grove's going to have I'm sure he's drawing up everything he can to get past Catholic Central right now.
Yep. All right, let's jump to Division 6. Central Montcalm and Newaygo. These two teams played earlier in the year. Newaygo with the win. I haven't looked to see how far Newaygo's been in the past, but like we talked about Ralph Munger and this Newaygo team last year, and it's been a while since I think they've been in a district final.
Yeah, and Montague is not the team they've been in the past this year, but still a great opponent to beat in week one. I mean, it's just like Montague's one of those teams you can circle to be there every year. So it's a good first win for them.
Yep.
And I think that I honestly I don't know a lot about Central Montcalm, so it's not a team we cover. So
Right.
Don't know exactly what to expect from them, but I know that this team is coached well and they'll be ready for this one. That's for sure.
Yeah, at least last week's win is a good stepping stone for them in territory that's not super familiar. So.
Yep. All right, Division 7, McBaine at North Muskegon. North Muskegon is actually a team I have watched personally the last 2 weeks. When I arrived last week, it was 42-0 in the second quarter, and then it was 49-0 at half. So that was kind of an easy win last week. But McBaine's going to be a team that's going to give them some fits, I think.
Yeah, for sure. North Muskegon also, they lost their quarterback to Muskegon. So the fact that they're still going to the playoffs right now says a lot about how well that program is run. And they have found a way to get here. So I wouldn't put anything past them at this point. I covered them back-to-back weeks in the playoffs last year, and they were a lot of fun to watch. So it's a team that I expect to make a deep run and get a shot at getting to Ford Field. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's a game that I get this Friday. So I'm excited to see them play a team that seems like it's very well matched up to them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
for sure. One other game I wanted to mention, I think that we did miss, is the Whitehall.
Oh, yes.
The
My
Whitehall
apologies.
winning, against playing Big Rapids.
We missed that one, yes.
I didn't want to give that game against Forest Hills Eastern. I mean, I think it was a pretty big win for Whitehall because I think
on the road.
At least me going into that with the way that Forest Hills Eastern has been this year, I kind of expected them to get the job done and get the win. So I think a lot of credit to Whitehall for going out there and getting a win.
Yeah, and that's why I have Andy with me in this podcast because he oversees me. He's like points out my mistakes, and I'm like, yes, you're exactly right. I skipped right over it, and my apologies.
This guy knows a lot more than I do.
My apologies.
Let's be honest about it,
my apologies to the Whitehall community.
I think they'll get over it.
So Whitehall, it's a team that the last 2 years they went 11-1 and 10-1, and they lost to South Christian in the playoffs, and they started 1-2 this year, lost to Zeeland West. Lost to Uni Christian, but other than that Portland game, they've played well down the stretch.
No doubt, and I mean they're just setting themselves up to go further. I think Big Rapids is a team they can get by. It's one of those games where the way that Forest Hills Eastern was playing going into this, even with the tough loss to West Catholic, I still felt like they were going to be a team that could maybe make a little bit of a surprise run, and it turns out it's going to be Whitehall. So we'll see what they can do, but I expect them to beat Big Rapids. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, another tough loss for Forest Hills Eastern and their season. They lost to South Christian at the end of that game last year. They've had some
tough
heartbreakers.
breaks. A lot of those kids came back thinking they could make it further. So
Yep.
again, that's all the motivation in the world. Still, sometimes it doesn't matter. So good on Whitehall for getting the job done.
Yep. But shout out to all the teams that are still remaining. Last one, Saugatuck goes to Decatur in Division 8. So we'll see if Saugatuck can move on as well. So, all right, guys, let's wrap this up. How many games do we have this week?
Oh, good question.
Jack usually
I didn't
tells
count.
us.
Yeah, Jack knows the number, I'm sure, but
Yeah.
you know it's over 20. If I had to guess, the over-under would be 21.5. So
Yeah,
I would take it around
Maybe
there.
we should start putting money on this every month.
Yeah, how many games there's going to be?
Yeah. So we'll have full highlights of all the district final games at Wood TV. Check out our podcast on YouTube and woodtv.com.
Boom.
Boom. All right. See you next week.
See ya.
Bye.
All right, we're good.